everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Physiotutors podcast. Today, I've got two guests that have been on the show previously, Molly Parker and Natasha Wilch. Ladies, you've been on the podcast before. If you want to give us a hi, and we'll jump on in and talk about the topics for today.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having us. We're excited to do it together.
Hello. Welcome. Excited to be back. And yes, coming together.
Glad to have you both back. Yeah, as I mentioned before we started, had a lot of interest and intrigue from the podcast that we've done with yourselves both previously. And I think the listeners will be happy to see both of you back, or hear both of you back on, I should say. But look, there's obviously a couple of things we're going to be talking about today. There's the Christmas concussion call. That's one of the main topics of today. But tell us what you guys have been up to leading up to this, and sort of what's brought us to this moment, as I think it's quite an important part of the story for what the concussion call is.
Yeah, so the whole concussion journey really started for me in 2011. So Natasha and I came together because we kind of both have this love for concussion, but we have had these different paths to get there. So this year we've recently joined together and created Concussion Compass to help people navigate these journeys. And really in 2011, I was hit by a cab driver as a pedestrian, and I was a new physio. We hadn't really had concussion education in school, so I didn't know that they didn't just go away. And it turns out, about 20% of these cases go on to have persistent symptoms, and I ended up falling into one of them, ended up losing my job, losing my apartment, deteriorated to where I had, very little memory. I had a movement disorder. My vision was gone. My vestibular system was gone. Personality changes, kind of you name it. So about 3 years in, I was, bedbound, living on my parents' couch. My mom was feeding me. I could barely stand up to take a shower. And like you said, we have our Christmas call coming up December 9th, which is going to be, how do you navigate the holidays with a concussion? Because I missed Christmas dinner 3 years in a row because I couldn't figure out how to manage my time, on top of dealing with the family members that kind of go through the, oh, you look great, and trying to explain something you can't explain. So we're looking forward to kind of helping people navigate the holiday season so they can actually enjoy it with their family this year, rather than feeling stressed and like they're missing out.
I have to ask, please tell me someone saved you the Christmas dinner and they didn't just give your plate to the dog or something. Come on, 3 years on the trot.
I would get like a saran wrap plate every meal, basically. And I love mashed potatoes. I'm like, load it up with mashed potatoes and give me XYZ, and then they bring it home. But it was always kind of a bummer. And so I have a blended family, so we have multiple events throughout the year. So we're going to try to help people. Natasha has a great framework for this that I love. And so we're going to help people kind of navigate that on their own.
Grant and Natasha?
Yeah, so I am not someone living with post-concussion syndrome. And so that's where I think Molly and I have a really unique look and approach to how we help our members, because you not only get someone who is living this journey with a medical background, but you also get me and a clinician who has dedicated my career in the last 5 years of like all my continuing education to treating people with concussion. So you get this beautiful blend of the two of us to help you both manage life and clinical aspects and treatment ideas in our membership, which is we're really the only ones that we know of out there that have that special concoction, let's say. But for me, I started on the concussion journey. One of my colleagues referred someone with a concussion to my clinic who wasn't recovering. And in the beginning, I had no idea what to do for this person. Like, I was scouring back to my PT stuff in school, of which, like Molly said, we got nothing on concussion in school. So I was like, okay, the brain controls the eyes. It does this. Let's just assess these different things. But basically what this one person did for me is opened up this box of like, I need to know more. And from that person, I just dove down the rabbit hole of pursuing education in this realm. And so I've done vestibular rehab, I've done IMS and acupuncture. For the last 2 years, I've been studying clinical neuroscience. So it's just having this deeper understanding of the brain and the functional connections, like we talked about on our last podcast, of these different systems and how someone with concussion can have such these diffuse, symptoms. for me, and how Molly and I actually started to connect, is I was seeing clients all the time. By the time they got to me, they were like, no one believes me. I've seen a zillion different practitioners. Everyone's telling me it's in my head. And it ended up with a lot of tears and a lot of tissue boxes in my office. And they would always leave feeling more hopeful. And then we would work with them and they'd improve. And I was seeing this so much. I am only one person, and to help someone on a one-to-one level, I love to do, but I knew the stuff that I was doing, and at least in the information I was sharing, could be shared on a bigger level to help more people. And then Molly and I actually connected via Instagram. That's how we met. We did not know each other before social media or Instagram at all.
Insta homies. I like it.
it. Yeah. And we just started connecting and chatting, and we would message, and it's like an online dating relationship, really, Molly. It's like we started with just messaging back and forth. We had a mutual friend who we both reached out to and talked to make sure the other person wasn't crazy. But we just kept talking, and we realized very quickly that we think the same way along the transfer cover. We always joke that we share a brain. We were both equally passionate about what we wanted to do for this community. And when we talked about how it would look, if we did it on our own, or if we came together, and we both just felt what we could bring together would be something truly special and amazing to help people on their journeys moving forward.
Okay. I think that's such an important and sometimes underrated aspect there, that having that relationship with your therapist, not necessarily that you become insta homies, but that you get on with the person that's treating you, and that even if you're not always 100% of the time thinking on the same lines, you guys have a common pathway to reach your end goals. Now, I think one of the beautiful things about having you both on the podcast today is I'd like to hear from both of you. Natasha, what is it that you think with your skill set separates you from somebody else who does the same sort of thing? And Molly, with you as the patient, what was it that when you met Natasha made you think, holy crap, this is a different level. This is someone that understands what's going on. Natasha, why don't you kick us off, and then we'll go from there.
I'm not very good about talking about myself, Sunny.
Even better.
I think it's a couple different things. I think as practitioners, sometimes we get so focused and laser focused on the issue the person is dealing with that we sometimes forget to extrapolate and look at the bigger picture and the whole person. So I do think one of my skills as a therapist in general is to really look at that whole person. And I'm not just looking at the symptom of concussion or the poor eye movement or the vestibular system, but looking at how this person's life is being impacted and making sure I address that in the sessions as well. In terms of when it comes to the actual therapeutic piece of things, I seem to have this knack for understanding how to integrate systems really well, and understanding when we deal with a system in silo to bring it to a point, but then also having the skill set to then take that and integrate it back into the rest of the system. So it's not, and then always bringing that back into function. It's this, I guess part of it's a little, I'm intuitive in what I do, but I have a big evidence, knowledge, science base in what I do as well. And so I have this ability to blend these two things together to have overall a positive impact on my client's life. I also strongly believe in rapport. And I think that you can be a phenomenal clinician, but if you are terrible at building a relationship and rapport with your client, that person isn't going to do as well with you as they could do with someone else. So again, I see the whole person. And I think that's a really big piece of it, because then I can take these nuances in what I do in the individual treatment, and I can always relate it back to their life. I can always make that tie and that connection to them on why we're working on your saccades to the right side, how this is affecting your day-to-day life. And having that ability to bridge that gap for people so they understand and relate to them like a human is a skill set that I think I'm very strong at.
Yeah. So as far as us working together, as a patient, I'll brag on Natasha a little bit more, because Sunny, we've talked about before the last podcast, it took me years to find people who actually knew what they were doing, enough to even have things that we could try. And I've ended up seeing over the last 10 years now, 90 healthcare providers, and over half of them had zero knowledge in the concussion area and was not helpful. I've had maybe 10 or 15 who moved the needle for me at all. And you'll see these, if you're a clinician and you're starting to see concussion patients come into your clinic and you see that they've seen all these practitioners, I'd really encourage you to take a step back and look at the story of how they got there, because I think it can be such a red flag for people of that maybe they're doctor shopping, but the reality of living it is, you are deteriorating, you're not functioning, you are massively struggling, you're losing like your livelihood and your income, and you have these medical bills and no one knows what to do with you. So you go to, X person, they kind of blow it off. So you go to the next person, they say, well, and you can tell they don't really get it, but they say, try X, Y, and Z. And so you do it because you want to try whatever you can, and it doesn't help. And so I ended up going from person to person like that for a long time. And when I met Natasha, after all these years, it's become very easy for me to tell who gets it and who doesn't. And off the hop, like Natasha's someone who just gets it. And we thought about it similarly and we conceptualized it similarly, but she also has like this huge heart. So I knew that going into business together, we brought the same values. And I feel very, very, very protective over the concussion community because I had such a rough go of it. And what that did to my personal life and my family and my bank account and all the things in my career. And so I was very careful and took my time getting to know each other so that when we finally partnered, I knew 100% that what we together brought to the table was going to be so impactful for these people. And Natasha, with 90 practitioners, I'm not kidding, she's the best physio for concussion I've ever seen. And she pulls it together in ways that other people don't even begin to comprehend. And it's just, particularly with the system integration, she's just incredible. And we coach her to try to talk about herself more because she's not great at it, because she's just exceptional. And so, yeah, I just am glad that we were able to meet and come together, and that she's my physio now because I've made a ton of progress. So
fair. I think the results in that sense kind of speak for themselves when you're able to move about and do what you're doing. And I think I saw a post recently about you even doing some cycling the other day, right?
yeah, I had, so previous to Natasha, let's say, I had severe dysautonomia, which is like the dysregulation of your autonomic nervous system. I had severe exercise intolerance, so I couldn't really get my heart rate up at all without getting significant symptoms. And I had a movement disorder, which there's a great group in LA that has helped me tremendously with that. But getting those last pieces to integrate was really, really challenging. And with Natasha's help, I've gone from not being able to get my heart rate over 100 and biking for maybe 5 minutes, barely turning the pedals, to now I'm up to like 140. And I can go, 25 minutes, and my dysautonomia has gone. My POTS is gone. My movement disorder has improved significantly. And so it's just a testament, one, to what she does, but two, that there's not a time limit on healing. And so for anyone listening, if you're experiencing symptoms yourself or you have these people ways out in your clinic, I am a true believer that when we match the proper treatment to the person and we do it in a proper dosage, that they can respond no matter how far out they are, because these are functional issues and that's what physio does. So it's just been huge.
It's nice to be able to hit the life starts again button when people write it off. Can you give us, for the listeners, any examples? Maybe we're going to make Natasha a little bit red here, pumping her up a bit. Any specific examples of things that she did differently to the other physios, the other healthcare practitioners that you met, just so people get an idea of what might make the difference, aside from the intangibles of, at least from my feeling, whoever Natasha speaks to, she can create a rapport just like that. And I noticed that in our pod together, very easygoing. So aside from that intangible of your personability, any other examples?
I think what she does really well, and as a patient, we're dealing with concussions of brain injury, right? So it has so many multifaceted things that it affects and so many ways it intertwines in your life. And because of that, it tends to be this multidisciplinary approach where there's not just one healthcare provider that's going to necessarily be able to do it all for you. And what was so frustrating for me is I ended up being my own case manager, and I'm trying to blend these multiple professions and put them all together in a way that makes sense. And honestly, I have a strong background in that, and I find it difficult as a patient. And so to have people with no medical backgrounds do this for themselves is ridiculous. And the frustration would be, you'd be with a clinician, you'd go to someone else, they would both contradict each other, or they both had no idea of what the other one was doing, so they didn't know how to integrate it together to make it function for you. And Natasha has an astounding big picture perspective where she understands what she does really well, but she also understands what to look for, when to know to pull in other professions. And if she's working with another profession, how does she alter her treatment so that it's functioning for this person, so they're not getting overwhelmed, or we're not getting, counterproductive treatment sessions going on. And I think that's a really important thing, that if you're going to treat like these, particularly these complicated cases, is to learn what you do, but you've got to know what all the other professions around you do, so you know when to pull someone in and you know how to work with them. As a patient, that's like a godsend. Recovery wise, you're going to get better results because you're not doing these like a la carte type things. It's actually a structured program.
I think the different thing for Molly too is that, so we haven't pulled other professions in for Molly when she's been here. So she has her naturopath and she has other professions she works with too, but where we talk about sometimes, depending on the therapist that you have, we need to address the neck and the C-spine. We need to address the ocular motor. We need to be able to address the movement motors. Those are all skills I have. So instead of having to pull in a different physio to help on Molly's neck and a different therapist to help her with her eye stuff, I have the ability enough with where Molly is now that I can pull all those pieces together and integrate it into one treatment session. So she only has to work with me and doesn't have to bounce between 3 different providers as well.
What would you guys recommend that a patient looks for when they're finding their healthcare provider, their physiotherapist, if they've had these struggles and they've gone through a bit of a journey trying to find someone that understands what they're going through? What would you say are the key things for someone to look out for?
Yeah, we tend to talk people through this fairly regularly, and really you're looking for someone who specializes in concussion. And so that should be current and advanced training. And I like to see like a quarter of their caseload or so is concussion people. And generally what we tell people to do is, because finding a practitioner is half the battle still at this point. And so it's asking around friends and family. Do you know someone who's already been somewhere and they've had a great experience that you can start with that? If that's not the case, it's going back to that good old fashioned Google and looking up, concussion physios in your area, checking out their website, getting an idea of their training, getting an idea of if this is going to be the right person. And then we recommend that you call the clinic before you go in and say, I'm experiencing X, Y, and Z symptoms. Is that something you have experience treating successfully? Like, is this a fit for me? And so that's tend to where we have people start. And then when we're there, it's making sure, like Natasha said, that you have that rapport, that you feel like you can tell when people get it, so that you feel like you're with someone who's hearing you and understanding you, so that when they give you advice or something that's scary for you or you're unsure of, that they know what they're doing and that they're bringing what they need to the table. As a patient, that's very helpful to feel like I can relax and put myself in their hands and just get better rather than having to case manage all my own stuff.
Sorry, I was saying to Molly the other day too, one of the things I'm loving, because we get this question all the time in Compass. And I think it's important for people to understand that Concussion Compass doesn't take the place of treatment. We are an adjunct to it. Yes, we have some simple exercises in that program, but we are never going to take the place of a one-on-one individualized rehab program, which we know truly is what people with concussion need. But what is amazing and what we're seeing so much in Compass right now, which makes us super excited, is we're seeing people take the information that we coach them on, take the information from our mini courses or from our mentorship calls, and they very clearly now know who they need to find as a practitioner. Whereas before, they'd be going to Google saying, like, I'm dealing with this, okay, I'm going to book an appointment with this person and see how it goes. And just kind of, they were winging it. Whereas now, people are making appointments with therapists that they know they need those treatments. And then they're going to those appointments informed and prepared with questions so that they know if they are being told something kind of appropriate or have that good information, but they feel empowered to make these decisions. And they know that when they book this appointment, it's going to be purposeful and help move them forward instead of throwing money away, trying to just wing it with another therapy. And we're seeing that a lot come out of Compass right now. And we're seeing people saying, I learned this, I took this to my physio, we didn't know this before, and we tested, and it turns out I am dealing with POTS or dysautonomia or vestibular stuff. And so we've now changed my treatment plan, or I've made an appointment with this person because it became clear I'm really still struggling with this. based on the mini course. And that's what Compass was all about. So we're seeing people become really powerful in their own case management, which unfortunately they still have to do. But in terms of we know that concussion recovery can be financially a hardship as well. They're making choices and in essence saving money because they now are making a choice to a therapy that they know is going to serve them.
What do you guys think has been the most valuable tool that you've both had on your journeys that someone could take into clinic with them tomorrow when trying to help somebody with a concussion?
I think from a clinician standpoint, concussions are multifaceted, right? We know they affect many different domains of your function. And I'm not saying you need to be a clinician that knows how to assess for all those domains, but you should have an idea of at least how to screen in those domains. Because what can happen is if you're a vestibular therapist, for example, and say, you can do a vestibular assessment like no one else, but you don't have a way to screen for the autonomics, you don't have a way to screen for cognitive, you don't have a way to screen for some of these other things, you could be missing a vital piece of what that person needs to be working on. And so as a clinician, I would just say familiarize yourself. So, be a master in your area if that's what you want to do, for sure. But have the ability or have the knowledge to know how to screen for at least the major systems that we know can be affected with concussion, because having that ability alone will help you identify if you need to pull someone else into your client's team.
Okay. Are there special tools that you use then in terms of equipment, or do you use more questionnaires to screen for those? How would you go about it?
So I assess every domain, but there are absolutely questionnaires. So example would be autonomics. You could look at if you just want to do a screen, you could use an outcome measure like the Compass 31. So it's a standardized, validated outcome measure. There is a long form and a short form. The Compass 31 is going to help you have an understanding if someone's dealing with dysautonomia. Okay. If they are, that needs to be addressed. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's something like the BIVS. So it's BIVSS. You could use that to help screen for visual dysfunction. So that would be one there. Cognitive, you can you can gather that mostly by your history, to be honest. Are they having trouble with memory? You could do a simple, like at the beginning of your assessment, I'm going to give you 3 words. Do they remember it at the end? You could pull that in different ways. So if you're vestib, are you scanning and assessing C-spine? So even just doing like a range of motion scan, and if you don't know special tests, that's fine, but look at range of motion. Do they palpate their muscles? So you just have those would be 4 different ways that you could do it. But yeah, you don't have to know how to assess it, but having some tools. So my clinic, when someone comes in, they fill out 3 outcome measures off the hop. They fill out the Rivermead. Because there's studies that show how you can use the Rivermead to help break the concussion into its different phenotypes. Rivermead, the BIVS, and the GAD. The GAD is your generalized anxiety and depression scale. We have clinical counselors on my team at Symphony. So if depression and anxiety is showing up based on where they rate this scale, we'll either pull counseling in right away, or we just monitor it and refer back to the doctor and kind of go from there. So, yeah.
I love that. I think that's, from a clinician standpoint, the hugest thing. I think there was definitely a trait of all the people I saw that had a positive effect on my recovery. And that was a growth mindset. We've talked about, I've had over 90 healthcare providers. A lot of those were bad experiences. And a lot of them, ended up being good experiences. But I think the big difference between those two is, I came into the clinic, I was experiencing X, Y, and Z, and the difference would be either that doesn't happen, you could tell they'd already decided what it was before you walked in, they could tell they'd already decided that didn't happen in concussions, and they weren't ever really hearing you or validating you. And it kind of ended up being this negative part of the process for me, because that not only wasn't that helpful or, a good use of my time and energy and money, but it was more invalidating and it added to the weight of the injury. Whereas when I saw people that practiced a growth mindset, they just heard you differently. And even if they didn't have a clue on how to help you, it was so validating to have that person be like, I hear you, I see this is going on, I don't have the skill set, but let me try to get you to someone who does. Or I can help you with X, Y, and Z. Like Natasha said, let's screen other areas and see who else we can maybe bring on the team. At the bare minimum, just acknowledging what you're experiencing was huge. And I felt like people with a growth mindset, they were curious, they listened like they had something to learn, they asked why. And people with that fixed mindset where I know all there is to know, if it's not getting better, it's your fault because it's not possible that I don't know anything else. It was just such a different experience. So that's what I would say, like day one, you can bring that into any of your difficult patients into the clinic. And as a patient, that makes a difference.
For us as clinicians, then, I want from both of your sides, where does the concussion compass then fit into the picture for the patient? And then how do you feel that the concussion call is going to help for the patients that are suffering?
Yeah, so for me, I like to view Concussion Compass as appropriate for a couple different reasons. Appropriate for anyone who's on this persistent journey. So for someone who doesn't have a medical team, it's going to be foundational in helping you figure out where you need to start your rehab, the types of practitioners you need to work with, and then it's going to help guide you and know what you're looking for in that practitioner and where you need to begin. In that meantime, they still have, if they do the full program, they get the foundations, which is our mini courses and our resources. They also get our mentorship section, which is where they get live calls, 3 live calls with Molly and I a month, and our guest expert once a month as well. So they're going to continue to get a wealth of information and have plentiful opportunities to ask questions specific to them for us to give guidance and give answers. For someone who has a solid rehab team, it's still amazing for a few different reasons. So one, we look at just some of the examples of still the information people are learning, they're taking back to their team and able to tweak their program and continue to have even more success. So it's the education and the knowledge it can provide is key. And then the second piece for anyone is the community. Like our Compass community is unbelievable in the sense of they are so positive. They are so uplifting. They are so supportive. We celebrate wins. So I'm a Molly and I practice a growth mindset, and I'm huge, and we're both huge on celebrating our wins as we go along this journey. And every Sunday we do What's Your Weekly Win? We have over 100 comments every week on people sharing their wins, congratulating each other on their wins, offering that support. We had a member who just shared in the post that she is now leaving the group because she's been a month symptom free. And the joy, the celebration, the like, oh my God, I'm so happy for you. Like this community, you can still come and you can vent if you've had a bad day, but this community is going to help you find the silver lining in that bad moment and turn it into something positive. And that is so rare to find. So even if you have a stellar team, you're still going to potentially learn things to help you guide your rehab. And you're going to have the most amazing support system on the way too that, I from the people in our community that I speak to is unmatched anywhere.
For me, just listening to that is also something that as a clinician would also be quite useful to get a better understanding of what's going on from the patient's perspective as well. If you're a clinician who deals with a fair bit of concussion patients as part of your caseload, this could help give you that deeper understanding that Molly, you mentioned that Natasha seems to have of what's going on for the patient and being able to put 2 and 2 together where others may not have been able to. Now, what's going to be the go-to for the concussion call itself then? What's the crack with that? Fill us in.
Yeah, so I mean, we do events throughout the year to help get this information to people because it's your difficulty on screens, your difficulty scrolling, you're having a hard time reading, and so having people condense this information and kind of do the research for you, so to speak, and give it to you in a way of here's the cliff notes of what you need to know and how you apply it to yourself is so helpful. And so for the Christmas call, given that it's the holiday season, we're going to be guiding people through how do you navigate the holidays with a concussion. Because I think I've told you guys before, I missed Christmas dinner, 3 years in a row. And so it's, how do I navigate the holidays? How do I pace myself out? How do I explain it to family? How do I manage Christmas shopping? Being in a store with a concussion is a nightmare. And so this is going to be a call to really kind of bring the human piece and the how it affects your day to day, so that people can manage the season and get what they need to know in a way that's applied to them, so that they can, function through the month of December without, wishing they could stand up by January. Just, it can be a big load.
Sunny, too, all the free events that we do throughout the year, those are open to clinicians and family and people living with concussion. So we do, and our foundations, the Compass program is 2 parts. So the foundations piece is there will be 10 mini courses in there. It's full of resources. That's open to people with concussion and loved ones who want to learn and educate. And then the full program with the mentorship piece is just people living with post-concussion syndrome. But the free stuff we do throughout the year, if we do webinars, our Roadmap to Recovery Challenge that we finished in September, that feels like it was yesterday. Like the coaching call, like those things are open to anybody, clinician, person, on concussion family members who want to understand and learn a bit more. And I think sometimes from a clinician's standpoint, like Molly talked about, like what this call is going to do, and we're going to introduce a framework I use to help people break down some of these things and navigate this as well. As a clinician, understanding these pieces of the human element is so important in helping coach your client as well. So,
okay. Is there any little teaser that you can give us for that at all?
The framework or the call?
The framework.
So I'll tell you that the way I ask you to look at an event is to look at it like a storyboard. And then we kind of build on that and go from there. So it's incredibly powerful in giving people the autonomy and the confidence to engage in parts of the holiday season.
How do the patients then react and take this on board? Are there any stories that you can share?
About Compass?
Compass and using the storyboard framework for them, how has it affected, hopefully positively, affected them?
Yeah, I think particularly if it's someone, because this is a lonely journey and a lot of people don't know other people going through it. So I think when people particularly find us for the first time, we get a lot of messages of like, I just listened to you guys. It's the first time I've heard someone get me. I'm in tears. I can't believe there's actually options for me, that sort of thing. And then when we have our people that have, been with the community and then they come on these kind of calls, we get the messages of, this was the situation I was struggling with. Here's how I implemented it and it went great. And I want to thank you for helping me be able to, talk to my in-laws about it, or, like something like that, where it really impacts like their day-to-day well-being and quality of life in a big way. And in a way where they know sometimes it's just hard to put into words. And so having someone give you the narrative, give you the framework, and in a way that people can then apply it to their own lives is just super powerful. So we get a lot of that feedback of, I did it and I tried it and it was great and thank you and that sort of thing.
Okay, grand. Natasha, have you got any experiences maybe from within the clinic of feedback you've had from patients?
Oh, when I apply this framework for them in the clinic?
Yeah.
So I mean, the biggest thing is the excitement people have when it's like, I was able to do this and I could attend my dad's like birthday. Or it's what it does is it teaches them a way to approach their day and to approach an event that they get to be a part of it again. So they get to feel that joy, they get to laugh, they get to interact with their family, and they get to leave without feeling guilty. And that is such a big piece. So for me, mostly it's clients who actually like, they got to go to their kids' like music concert again, or they had the skill set to be able to look forward to going to a wedding instead of dreading it. That's a big one too. So sometimes what I find with many of my clients too, is there's an event coming and there's all these other feelings tied up into that upcoming event, right? So they'll share, so I had a client who had her daughter's wedding was coming up, and it was, I have to see all this family, and this is how long the event is, and I have to do this, and I don't know if I'm going to make it, and I don't know how symptomatic I'm going to be, and I don't, all these things. So it's not only just what's actually going to happen in the event with the symptoms that stimulate someone, but it's the what ifs all the way up to it. And it was for this person, it was the fear of disappointing people if they couldn't stay the whole time, or if they couldn't engage in everything. And giving them this framework and working through this framework, it took away that, oh my gosh, what if, and took away the guilt, so that what they did, what they could attend this wedding and enjoy every second of it. And then left when they had to leave, and there weren't those feelings of guilt or discomfort or fear of disappointing anyone when they left. So it lets them be active in life in some way again.
I feel like that's often a forgotten part as a clinician looking at the patient, that the patient does have this guilt aspect to when they feel like they can't complete their obligations, shall we say, whether that's attending the wedding, attending the recital, or what have you. And you saying that reminded me of when I was dealing with this myself, and I dealt with my own little journey during the second year of my first degree in physiology, and where I should have probably taken the year out and deferred. I didn't want to disappoint my family, with my brother and sister both going to university and doing well in their own rights. I thought, no, I have to power through and continue with this, even though I couldn't spend longer than 10 to 15 minutes in a lecture, and would regularly have to go leave or nap in my car or at my mate's place. I think that's really good for the clinicians to understand that, hey, these guys and girls dealing with this are going through more than you can put your finger on, or more than you can wave a pen in front of their eyes for. And as a patient, it's nice to know that you're not alone, and this isn't just you being weird, or it's not just you not being able to deal, or you don't need to man up or grow up here, or whatever catchphrase you want to throw at it. And yeah, I can see how both of you have said this could be quite emotional for people, realizing that I can continue and get on with my life. And it can be just quite a powerful tool for people to be able to get on with and move forward with.
Mm-hmm. So that's a piece of what we're doing in December, and that'll be a free coaching call as well. So, I mean, Molly and I will both be promoting it on our Instagrams. You'll just have to sign up, but it will be a free coaching call. It's called Navigating the Holiday Season, obviously, but it'll be done via webinar jam. So people don't have to worry about sitting on a Zoom call and seeing the screens and seeing all the grids. Everything we do when we launch something or Encompass, we very much try to have people's needs in mind and minimize any possibility of symptoms that we can. So yeah, this call registration will start at the beginning of December. It'll be on by the time this podcast actually launches. And so people can just visit mine and Molly's Instagrams, and there will be links to register for this coaching call, and it is free. So anyone who wants to learn more, clinician, family member, someone on their own journey, like, we encourage you to come join us.
Awesome. How have you guys found it, given the situation across the globe right now, for people trying to deal, given the stressful factors going on that are, quite frankly, outside of their control? How have you helped people to deal with, and how have you found that your patients have dealt with themselves these sort of situations with COVID or the election or what have you?
Molly, do you want to chat?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple pieces there. So Compass is great because you can do it from anywhere, right? So if the clinic you're seeing closed down, or if you're having difficulties getting where you once were before, all those kind of things, we're able to offer you something to help keep your recovery moving forward, and things you can do on your own to empower you. So that's been amazing, so that people still feel like they can move forward in their recovery from like a clinical aspect. Um, from a mental health aspect, it's interesting because Natasha and I have been talking about that. It was, the world is in this uncertain time. They can't control it. They don't know when it's going to end, that sort of thing.
The
And from
Mayan
my
calendar,
perspective,
2012, or COVID?
COVID, both actually. But it's just like, as a patient, you're like, welcome. That's what I live with every day. So it was interesting when the pandemic hit, because people all of a sudden were in these circumstances where they were isolated. They didn't want to be home. They had to be home. It wasn't their choice. The grocery store was a nightmare, all these things that I deal with every day. And so it was almost two folds. And one side, I think people that live with disabilities have a lot of perspective and a lot of value to the rest of the world right now in how you deal with these kinds of circumstances, because this has been their life, in some cases for months or for years. So there's that aspect. And then from the other approach, it was triggering as a concussion patient, to all of a sudden hear people who told me that I just should get off the couch, or all those, where like, oh, I'm home and I don't want to. I'm like, oh, you mean it's not a vacation? You got to be home all day? Like, people would say that to me. So there was like, I felt like this resentment part come up for me a little bit. And I heard that a lot from other people in the brain injury community. But then there's also this piece of, we've navigated this. So I think bringing that to the world of how, and I've been doing like some webinars on how you balance mental health during these times, because we've been living it for so long that I think there's a lot of tools and stuff that we can offer people. But it's been interesting because I've felt very conflicting about all of the uncertainty in the world, so yeah. Or for people who recovered already, and they're all of a sudden experiencing the isolation again, and they're experiencing the uncertainty again, and they're experiencing the loss of income again. There was a lot of people where that was very triggering, from almost like a PTSD-ish perspective of it, reminded them of what their recovery was like before.
Yeah, double dipping can't be easy with something like that.
Yeah.
For me, from a clinical perspective, it was acknowledging, and so like this, we talked about this a lot with Molly, because I was like, again, that's where I don't have that level of understanding, right? Like I've never been, I know what happened in March for me personally, but to hear Molly's perspective was really eye-opening for me, and just gave me a whole new respect for it as well. And I love that we have that relationship where we are very candid with each other. If one of us is driving the other nuts, we tell each other, like, so for her to share that with me was super powerful, just from learning as her friend, but then learning as a clinician as well, and understanding a bit more what some of my clients were going through. Like, the flip side of me always wants to try to solve a problem. And so my clinic, and so my big thing was, all of a sudden all these clinics were closing, and the biggest thing that people were coming to me about, because I'm a clinician, is that I have no therapy, and my clinic is closed, my practitioner is like stopped everything, I'm just like left here hanging. How do I continue my rehab? So those were the questions I was getting. I think just based on the fact that I'm a clinician more than anything. So for me, that's where it was, I do the virtual side of things. I do telehealth. I've been doing it for years. And I would, every client I would reach out to, I'd say, reach out to your practitioner and ask them if they're doing telehealth. And some of them did embrace it and some of them didn't, but it was still trying to find a way so that people knew they could potentially still have access to their rehab, if they chose to kind of continue. So so I got I got more the clinical side of people reaching out to me in that regard, being like, what do I do? My rehab's been stopped, my clinic's closed, that sort of thing. So
how was it for the people that were part of Concussion Compass then? Did you notice an uptick there with people? And how was the community dealing with it as well?
We launched
in April.
Yeah, so we had planned to launch anyways, and then, the world closed down and we're like still ticking up towards our launch date. And so, there was that week where everyone was really looking for stuff to do at home. And then there was that week where everyone was just losing their minds. And that's the week we launched. So, but we definitely had a huge influx of people. I think one, because these resources weren't available at all. Like going through this recovery, this is what I wish I would have had. And a lot of these things, they weren't options for people. So the fact that it's an option at all is amazing. And then it came in a time where people really needed to be able to do more from home. And so it kind of, satisfied a lot there. And it's grown fairly quickly, I think, because of that. And yeah, it's just been, the timing's been interesting.
Yeah.
I think one thing that we've kind of mentioned on the side, but haven't really gone into at all, is that you guys do have a sort of library, a wealth of information within the Compass about the sorts of things in terms of research that your patients can then look at and see and kind of get more of an understanding. Can you maybe touch on that? And then any last little bits that you'd like to mention with the Christmas call or what have you?
Yeah, I mean, Compass is really set up where you can use it in a couple ways. So it's the foundation section. We like to think of it like Netflix for concussion, and it's 10 mini courses. And we have them ordered in such a way where you can work through it as a course at home. So it's going to teach you these foundational things of how to pace your day. And if you're struggling with sleep, nutrition, all those things that people hear so much conflicting information about, it really condenses it for you and people can walk through it that way. Or we have it where you can use it as a toolbox. So say, for example, you're someone who's going through recovery, you're treating X, Y, and Z, that's going well, but you're really struggling with these headaches. You can pop into the headache section and kind of dial in what types of headaches you specifically are experiencing and then how you treat those and speed up your recovery that way, rather than going from doctor to doctor to doctor and figuring it out over, a year or so. We're able to condense it for people. So it can really either be, a course essentially that you can do at home, or it can be this toolbox where you pull what you need when you need it so that information is done for you.
Natasha, anything to add there?
No, she pretty much nailed it she summed it very succinctly.
Before we go back onto the Christmas call, you mentioned something there that has piqued my interest in the last half year, actually, on the nutrition side of things. How much impact has that had for you personally, Molly, in terms of your own personal recovery? And then again, Natasha, I think you know where I'm going to go with this next half of the question. As a clinician, one, how much input do you give to your patients on the nutrition side of things in terms of recommendations? Or do you, again, because I know you have a big network within your clinic, do you have someone in the clinic that deals with that more? Okay, you're nodding there for anyone listening, but we'll let Molly answer first, and then Natasha, you can chime in after.
Yeah, nutrition is one of those things, because as a physio before, I did orthopedics, but I also treated this subset of people. We kind of got known in town for treating the more out of the box cases, and they ended up being a lot of sensitive nervous systems and autoimmunes. And I saw what diet changes did for those people. And so here I am in my own recovery, cognitively not very there. And it took me about 2 years before I drastically changed my diet. And what we know in concussion is, for some people, inflammation can be a huge driving factor of these persistent symptoms. And not only that, having kind of this base of a really healthy diet can help prep your brain for neuroplasticity so that you can move forward in other areas. So the first time I completely changed my diet to what we consider an anti-inflammatory diet, my symptoms dropped from I was regularly at a 9 to a 10 out of 10 in pain. I was so far beyond where I would have gone to the ER. I was barely functioning. It was, you needed to make a choice to live every day. Basically, it was really, really severe. And within 2 months of changing my diet, my symptoms alone dropped to a 5 or a 6 out of 10, to the point that I didn't even realize it was the diet the first time. I was doing this other treatment. I thought it was great. Come to realize, and now I'm on the anti-inflammatory diet all the time. So diet is one of the major things that I've used to manage symptoms. I use it in instead of medication in many cases. So for years, I've managed my symptoms with food rather than being on like this slew of medications and on top of that. And it's huge. And even to this day, if I cheat a little bit, I will get symptomatic. I'll get more headaches. I'll struggle with my speech. I'll have a hard time sleeping. You know, all those kind of things that I'd struggle with before will pop back up. And so it's been a way for me to manage my symptoms and know that I have, you know, I can choose when I'm eating, how do I want to feel, and kind of move forward from there. And I almost feel like if you're someone with persistent symptoms or any sort of chronic pain or nervous system funkiness or any time and you haven't looked at diet yet, in my mind, it's a non-negotiable because it's so incredibly impactful.
Nice. Natasha?
Yeah, so we always touch on it. So technically in British Columbia, nutrition is outside of my scope of practice. So I am limited in the exact information that I can give. However, it is absolutely always something that we touch on in sessions, and we will talk about the benefit of an anti-inflammatory diet, or at least we'll talk about the benefit of like two of the most inflammatory food groups. And we might talk about, you know, do you want to try and cut something out to see if it feels better? So we will talk generally about nutrition. If someone actually wants to make a guided change or implement a change, then I will either connect them with, we have a dietitian as part of our team. So I will either connect them with a dietitian or the dietitian on our team. Later this year, we have a registered holistic nutritionist starting with us. And I want to make, my goal is actually that when someone with PCS comes to see us at the clinic, that is a non-negotiable part of the assessment is with our nutritionist, because of the power I know it can have in concussion and chronic pain. The other thing I do now too is I work closely with a naturopath in my community. So I don't have a naturopath on my team, but if I am concerned about inflammatory things or metabolic things and also want to bring nutrition into play and my dietitian isn't available, then I will refer to a naturopath as well. So it is 100% an area that, again, when we look at the whole person and everything we're treating, something that needs to be paid attention to for sure.
That's amazing. You mentioned there the two sort of major groups that for inflammation. Can we get that?
So dairy is a big one, and then gluten is the other one.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say it's funny too. What I say for some people too, like the change to nutrition is hard. So literally, if depending on where you're starting and your eating habits, it's going to kind of dictate where you go. Even if all you do is first is cut out the processed foods and sugars, and then just see what that happens. You don't have to make these big radical changes off the hop. You can look at, if you have a really unhealthy diet and you're eating fast food 2 or 3 times a week, start by just cutting out the fast food and then going there, right? So you just kind of, you meet the client where they're at and then kind of go forward from there.
I feel like I'm attacked.
You're eating fast food 2 or 3 times a week, Sonny?
So Christmas call, yeah. No. But are there any, how would you sum up for anyone listening to this how this Christmas call could help to positively affect and change the way that they look at things going into the season, holiday season, Christmas season?
I think for me, the social aspect is so important. And I think sometimes people get caught up in, I have to do X, Y, and Z. I can't do anything that might potentially provoke my symptoms. It kind of starts to come with this fear, I'm incapable, I'm unable, and they lack like this social connection that we as therapists, we all know how important that is. And so I think what it will give them is this realization of they don't need to be fearful and tools that they can actually use to navigate it so that they get that time where they leave feeling emotionally full. And I think that is so powerful when you're going through, particularly for these longer recoveries, you have to have that because they can be really tiring, and getting those fulfilling moments and those moments of human connection again is just massively important. So I think it's a great opportunity for people to come and get the tools to know how to do it, but then also the confidence that they're doing it in a way where they're not going to cause themselves any harm, and they can have a little bit of both.
Yeah, just, what Molly said, but then I want them to know that they can enjoy this season. I want them to know that they don't have to be fearful of the month of December, and it's not going to set back their recovery, and that they have and can go into the season, like Molly said, with the tools that they can laugh and smile and be with their family and feel confident that they're going to come out of this okay.
Right. And where can they find it?
Molly's Instagram or my Instagram. So Molly, I'm blanking on your Instagram. And I'm at Natasha.Wilch. So there will be, that's a total blank moment. There will be links from both of our Instagrams that they can register for the call.
Yeah. Or if you're signed up for our email list, you'll get an email about it as well.
Ladies, look, thank you so much for being able to come back onto the podcast and being able to talk with me today. And that the information about maybe fast food isn't that great. We'll have to assess that one. But no, really, I think what you're doing for the concussion community is huge. And hats off to you both for putting yourselves out there, getting this information together for people, and sharing your experiences and your knowledge on the topic with us, with the listeners, and with the populace in general. Thank you. Well, ladies and gents, thanks again for listening in, and we'll catch you next time. As always, wherever you're listening to this, we appreciate your time, and if you have any comments or suggestions, feel free to get in contact and let us know. Until next time, peace.